If you were a mad scientist with absolutely no moral or ethical dilemmas that might trouble you, what would be an experiment you'd like to conduct to better understand humanity? Olympics but for genetically modified people. The steroid games but better. Teach someone how to play an instrument but never let them hear any music that isn't their own. That'd be quite the experiment in my opinion. If they only have purely continuous instruments, like trombones, it would be interesting to see what they choose with regards to notes. How many soft punches in the left leg would it take to kill someone? Original poster replies. These are the big questions. Probably less than most people would think. Enough repeated trauma will eventually cause issues. Just look at what rainfall can do to rock over a long period. Your leg is a lot softer than rock. That may actually be why it lasts longer. Skin and muscle can stretch and bend. Much better at absorbing shock. Instead of moving with the hits, the rock sort of just disappears after a while. Fuse shark and human DNA with the aim of allowing humans to regrow teeth. I'm sure this isn't even possible, but I'd try. I saw something pointing out that the majority of animals that can regrow teeth like sharks and crocodiles generally have one type of tooth, and that it is like a generalist tooth. While animals like humans have several different kinds of teeth, molars for grinding and crushing food, incisors for cutting, etc. that need to fit together better, and that is a reason we may not regrow teeth, as constantly regrowing teeth that would fit together properly and in different types of teeth just may have not worked out well evolutionary speaking. Evolution is more like epic close enough unless there's a measurable downside that would let a mutation, like regrowing teeth, thrive. Evolution follows the policy of if it isn't broke don't fix it. Animal lives its entire life in pain and violently explodes after having children while they had children. I don't see what the problem is. Evolution says as it walks around, ready to tend to the rest of the animals. The best example must be the babirusa. Few things seem so outlandishly horrible. I get that most animals die because of failings of their body. Perhaps the heart gave up, perhaps the liver stopped working, making the brain toxic, but those seems more like it is what it is, but getting slowly stabbed by yourself into the brain? Yeah, I'm not sure there is a God. Edit, obligatory pick. Web link. On one side, we have intelligent design, and on the other side we have epic close enough. I like the idea of evolution as a disembodied entity shrugging things off and saying that. I was thinking octopus. Graft octopus arms onto a human. Or vice versa. I'm sure some Japanese porn studio is already looking into this. Or vice versa. I'm fairly certain that if you gave octopi thumbs, they conquer the world. The vault tech vaults from Fallout. They'd be fairly easy to pull off and convince the folks in the vaults that civilization was destroyed. That way communication could reasonably be cut off and they'd be isolated. It'd be very interesting to see how people's behavior would be affected and if the isolated communities would form societies significantly different from what we know. This even includes some of the joke vaults. Project Safe House. They could even be monitored by the shadow government, the Enclave. This even includes some of the joke vaults. Gary. Raise a bunch of kids without any exposure to music or rhythm, and see what happens. Expose them to it later on, in their late teens, and see what they think of it. Alternatively, only expose them to music in 7/8, then 4/4, 6/8, etc. when they're older, and see how they respond to it. This is a genuinely fascinating idea. You would assume they would naturally find 7/8 to be their baseline time signature and 4/4 would feel clunky and strange. A really great suggestion. I remember noticing in college that horse-based cultures had a horse-based sort of beat way more than non-horse-based cultures did. Rage Against the Machine is a favorite among the Amish community. They really do have that horse-based sound. Rumspringa does bring out the "fu I won't do what you tell me" spirit out. For a few days at least. Breed humans for specific traits. I wonder how tall/small I can make a human, or a body part, nose, hands, feet, ears, before things start breaking. If I knew how things worked, maybe try adding new features in. Obviously, I would have some mad scientist sons and daughters to continue my work. Weird artificial human evolution could take a while. This sort of thing is mentioned in Dune, but more so to breed a perfect human. Blay, perfection is boring, I want to see the extremes. I have 3 functional kidneys, so I always wondered if I mated with a man who also has this abnormality, would our kids also have 3? It seems genetic. My grandma also had 3. What if the kids were also mated with multi-kidney people? How many kidneys could a human body hold? Would my great-great-grandchildren have like 10 kidneys stuffed in there? Would that family become the go-to resource for kidney donations? Could we also breed their blood type so they were universal donors? Are there people out there with other duplicate organs? Could we use selective breeding to create lineages to provide other organs for those who need them? Crazy thinking. The weirdest money glitch in the making. Insurance companies hate this one trick. Selective breeding is what I thought of too. How smart can you make a person? How strong? What is the minimum amount of oxygen a human can survive on if we keep breeding for it? How cold or heat resistant? Which traits can be combined and which ones can't? I think we are maxing out on height anyway. Tall people seem to get bad injuries. Back, knees, ankles. Next step, people without knees, backs, or ankles. Problem solved. Just don't do chins. It didn't work out well for the Habsburgs. That was a different kind of selective breeding. Historically, this has happened in slave populations. I will throw a kid into a jungle with only monkeys and only intervene in a time of need. I want to see how exactly the child will turn out and let them live in the jungle forever. I also want to see whether the level of intelligence will help the kid become leader one day. I believe psychologists tried to raise a monkey alongside their child to see if the monkey would become/learn to act more human. They called it off when their kid acted more monkey-like instead. So it's possible to return to monkey. Children raised by dogs have serious cognitive development problems such as inability to learn language. A human raised by primates would probably be closer to a primate than a human capable of functioning in modern civilization. There are some examples similar to this already. They're called feral children. They've been raised by monkeys, wolves, dogs, bears, sheep, and other surprising animals. Web link. Thank you. Interesting read. I would put all political parties into their own individual societies and government. It would be interesting to see what new ideas people come up with to hate each other in these closed systems. I feel pretty confident that within a couple generations it would be split again into liberal and conservative parties, although perhaps with slightly differing ideals in some areas. We could learn a ton about the human brain and how to fix it if we could just damage specific parts of it and see what goes wrong. Remember me, Eddie? When I killed your brother? I talked just like this. Better than getting the dip. Some of the greatest advancements in cognitive neuroscience have come from freak brain injuries that have done just that. I immediately thought of Phineas Gage when I read this. Sucks what happened to him, but it really did help our understanding of the brain. Is he the one with the railroad spike through his frontal lobe? Not a railroad spike, a 13-pound, 1 1/4 thick and 3'7" long iron rod. Spike makes it sound like something small. The thing was over half his height and nearly as thick around as a golf ball. Holy crap. Did not know. Had to look him up. Web link. Salmonella. Improbable tales of survival. He lost a little of his mind, which makes him lose his mind a little. Oh yeah, I shouldn't exist. His brain, one day. I had meningitis as a 2-week-old child and then suffered 13 concussions in high school. I'm donating my brain to science when I die, so hopefully I can help some other poor effer with this same crap I'm going through still years after. How did you get so many concussions? Kind of related, but Wilder Penfield was a neurosurgeon who mapped the brain by zapping portions of it during operations. He was able to remove a portion of the patient's skull while they were awake and electrocute the parts of the cortex. They would report back to him what they were experiencing while he was doing it. So for example, if he zapped a portion of the brain related to vision, the patient would report that they could no longer see. We are also able to learn a lot about the human brain through strokes. For example, strokes that occur in the left hemisphere will generally impact language and speech. Strokes that occur in the cerebellum will impact motor control and balance. What's cool is that when one portion of the brain is damaged, other healthy parts are able to compensate for the loss due to plasticity. This obviously wouldn't work for areas of the brain related to vision, hearing, etc. I had a temporary lobectomy surgery for my epilepsy. Before they cut, they tested the areas by basically poking around and watching what happened. They marked areas for leg, arm, face, etc. I was awake for part of it. They showed me pictures and I said, "That is a blank." I remember they showed me a picture of a spoon and I said, "That is, I heard someone say, "Okay, not that spot." They ended up removing my left hippocampus and, unsurprisingly, my memory has taken a hit. It is odd because in addition my personality has had some changes too. How interesting. I feel like I would be scared just knowing that my brain is exposed and being prodded at lol. The hippocampus is responsible for memory and forming new ones, so yeah, like you said, definitely not surprising that that's taken a hit after your surgery. It makes sense that your personality changed as well because the hippocampus is part of the limbic system. What sort of personality changes have you experienced? I'm just curious. No problem, it's all weird. I am more outgoing than I used to be. I was a stereotypical introvert but am now pretty in the middle. I was really into model trains but not at all anymore. In fact, I'm totally into gardening and flowers in general. Before surgery, a garden was a maybe someday thing. With the memory issues, I am working on taking notes, making lists, and scheduling things. If someone introduces themselves, by the time I've replied with my name I've forgotten theirs. Recalling things in my head is difficult. I've even lost names of family members. Finally, I am way more emotional than ever before. Being a manly man, I had probably only ever cried once in my life, but now have bawled several times. It's as if I'm still trying to learn how emotions work. And the surgery didn't work, as we wanted it to. I have fewer seizures, but not as few as we were expecting. I'd give myself $1 billion, and just see what happens. It's all in the name of science. Kidnap politicians. Drug them into a highly suggestive state. Subject them to various scenarios, World War III, they become president, unlimited money and power at their fingertips, etc., and see which ones are truthful as to their aims, which are moral, and which are corrupt and evil. Televise the results. Damn, LSD would yield some interesting results. Laughing out loud, you'd have to be careful to make sure you create the environment without coercing them to handle it a specific way. Raise children in isolation from, no knowledge of the other gender, later after puberty introduce them to each other without any form of context or explanation, see what happens. I think this one might be my favorite. That would be really interesting to see. I think you'd just get a lot of pregnancies. Obviously I'm not an expert, but sex is such a lizard brain thing that I think it would happen. Ooh, I like this one. Put a newborn into an environment consisting of male and female adults, parents, 2 older adults, grandparents, and a caregiver/babysitter, young adult, with occasional presence/interaction with others in a community setting. The difference between this and a normal world is that each person speaks a different language. Mom only speaks Italian, dad only Chinese, babysitter Farsi, etc. All of them understand all the languages used by others in the experiment, but they never speak in anything except their one assigned language. It's important that there be no bias/assignment, not i.e. all women use a language in the same language group. The same goes for tall/short people, kindly/strict people, etc. Since there are approximately 200 sufficiently distinct languages, you can create 40 such groups in the community. Each person in a core group, parents, grands, and babysitter, assists in coaxing/teaching the infant to speak, each using their personal language, i.e., the baby will be expected to learn 5 different words for spoon, food, etc. At about age 2.5, the children begin to interact with each other. Observe each one's preferences and how /if/ when they teach other children their words for things. As the children reach puberty, start reducing the number of adults so that by the time the kids are in their teens, it's just them with no outside influences. How does their splintered languages affect their social order? Do they develop a universal language? Etc., etc., etc. The slave trade created situations vaguely similar to this. Adult slaves were taken to the Caribbean from all over West Africa, all speaking different languages. As you'd expect, the adults learned to communicate with each other and specific words were gradually adopted as the word used by everyone, but it was never a true language. What's fascinating is that the next generation, their children, would then turn this into a real language with grammar rules, like you always say subject, verb, object, in that order, and simple tenses for past, present and future, etc. I was looking for this. My Haitian neighbor was explaining this to me and it was very interesting. For example, they used a made-up language, but there is also French influence as the island was under French rule. They learned some French to be able to communicate with the French, and then eventually revolted, and the language today is a combination of all of that. I'm not Haitian, so I could have some of it wrong, but I thought it was neat. You are correct. You are referring to Haitian Creole. Source: I am Haitian. How long have you, been planning this for? It's been in my back brain for a few years, slowly growing/fermenting. The cognitive abilities and even intelligence of a person who grew up in such a richly multilingual environment would be absolutely fascinating and interesting to observe. I'm Malaysian Chinese. Our country's national language is Malay. Our household language is English. Our kids go to Mandarin medium schools. I'm Hokkien, Chinese sub-clan. My wife is Cantonese. Both speak 2 separate dialects, so basically, our kids grow up main language, English. Formal education language, Malay/Mandarin everyday life, Malay/English household/family, English/Cantonese/Hokkien. I find that my kids take much longer to learn how to speak compared to my monolingual friends' kids. As much as 12 to 15 months longer for the brain to click. The upside is, my kids can basically function in 90% of the known world. Malaysia was my first thought. My husband is Malaysian Indian. When he was in school, the national language was still English until high school when it switched to Malay. At home, his mother spoke one Indian dialect, his dad's language was Telugu, but he was a minister and preached in Tamil. He had lots of Chinese friends and spoke Mandarin with them. He grew up fluently speaking 5 languages, knowing when to speak which one, and easily learning 3 more dialects in India. Edit to add, he moved to USA, quickly learned Spanish, married English only. Me occasionally spoke to his parents and siblings in Telugu and couldn't ask where a bathroom was in Malay when we went back to Malaysia to visit after 20 years. But, after about a week, he was fluent again. I've ruined him, lol. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.